I wasn't supposed to be there long, just to fix a light switch in her office. She's harmless, my best friend had said, smirking. Just do me a favor and keep an eye on her while I'm gone. Harmless. Right. The first time I saw her, she was standing by the window of the old repair shop, one hand pressed to the glass, watching the rain slide down in thin, silver lines. She turned when I came in, her voice calm but clipped. You're early. She wasn't what I expected. Mid-40s maybe. Polished, precise, the kind of woman who looked like she carried her silence the way some people wore jewelry. A faint scent of coffee and sawdust hung in the air between us. I lifted the toolbox a little higher. You said the switch in here keeps flickering. Over there, she said, pointing toward the back. I tried to fix it myself, but it's stubborn. I followed her hand, steady, deliberate, and caught the faintest tremor in her fingers before she tucked them into her pockets. The light switch was old, maybe older than me, paint chipped around the edges. I bent down to test the wiring. She didn't leave the room. I could feel her behind me, the soft sound of her breath, the faint shift of her shoes on the wooden floor. Your brother said you managed the place, I said, trying for casual. I keep it running, she replied, voice low. He keeps it open. Something in the way she said that, quiet, resigned, made me glance back. She was leaning against the desk, eyes on a stack of receipts she wasn't really reading. Her hair fell loose over one shoulder, streaks of gray catching the light. You always fix things yourself? I asked. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Sometimes. It doesn't always work. I could have sworn she was talking about something else. When I finished, I flipped the switch. Once, twice. The light came steady. All good now. She stepped closer, testing it for herself, her hand brushing mine just briefly. It wasn't deliberate, but it wasn't nothing either. Her eyes lifted, meeting mine for half a second too long. A pause bloomed there, thick, quiet, awkward in a way that felt like gravity. Thank you, she said softly, pulling back. I nodded, throat dry. Sure. She crossed to the door, then hesitated, hand on the knob. For a second, I thought she might let me leave. Instead, there was a soft click, the sound of the lock turning. I froze. She didn't look at me right away, just leaned her head against the wood, exhaling. Sorry, she murmured. Old habit. I don't like people coming in when I'm thinking. I tried to laugh, but it came out thinner than I meant. Guess I'm trapped then. She turned, finally facing me, eyes searching my face like she was trying to read something I didn't know I was saying. Not trapped, she said quietly. Just here. The rain outside deepened, drumming against the windows. The light hummed overhead, steady now, golden on her skin. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and looked down, as if she regretted saying too much. I'll unlock it in a minute, she added, voice returning to its practiced calm. You've done enough. But she didn't. She just stood there, the silence stretching between us, filled with all the things we didn't know how to name yet. When I left later, after the rain eased and the door finally opened, I kept hearing that click in my head, the one that sounded like a decision, or maybe a mistake. Either way, I still can't stop thinking about it. I came back the next week to help her inventory the shop. It wasn't my idea. Her brother had texted me in his usual rushed shorthand. Can you help her organize the storeroom? She won't ask. The place smelled of dust and engine oil. The light through the windows fell in soft stripes across the floor, catching particles that drifted lazily in the air. She was already there when I arrived, sleeves rolled up, sorting through boxes like she'd been at it for hours. You didn't have to come, she said without looking up. I know. Her tone made it clear she wasn't used to being helped. There was a quiet efficiency to the way she moved. Everything measured, nothing wasted. I found myself watching her hands more than I should have. They weren't delicate, not really, but they had a steadiness that made even the smallest motions look graceful. We worked in silence for a while, the air filled only with the rustle of paper and the scrape of cardboard. Every so often, she would ask me to hand her something, a wrench, a ledger, a pen, and each time, our fingers brushed just slightly. It wasn't enough to mean anything, but it didn't feel like nothing, either. At one point, I caught her pausing by the window, rubbing her wrist as if to ease some ache that had been there a long time. You okay? I asked quietly. She nodded too quickly. Fine. Just tired. Her voice softened on the last word, almost like she hadn't meant to let it out. That's when I saw it. The exhaustion behind her careful posture, the faint smudge under her eyes, the way she stared at the empty street outside as though she was looking for something she'd lost years ago. You work too much, I said. That got me a small, crooked smile. Someone has to. There was a beat of silence before she turned back to the shelf. Your generation doesn't do much waiting around, does it? I grinned. Depends who we're waiting for. Her hand froze midair. She didn't look at me, but her voice came quieter now, the edges thinning. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? She sighed, closing the ledger with a soft thud. Because some of us start to believe them. That stopped me cold. The hum of the light above us filled the silence that followed. I wanted to say something, to ask what she meant, but she'd already gone back to sorting, as if her own words embarrassed her. The careful distance returned, but it felt fragile now, like glass over warm water. When we finished, she leaned against the table, brushing dust off her hands. Thank you, she said again, not meeting my eyes. Her voice trembled just slightly, barely there, but I caught it. As I packed up my things, she reached to turn off the lamp. For a second, the light caught on her skin, and the room dimmed into gold. Good night, she murmured. I hesitated at the door. You'll lock it again? That made her glance up, lips parting in the faintest smile. Always. But her hand lingered on the switch, as if she wasn't ready to let the room go dark. The rain had started again, heavier this time, drumming against the tin roof of the shop in a restless rhythm. The power had flickered once, then steadied. She'd asked me to stay until it passed. The storm had knocked the back door off its hinge, and she didn't want to be alone while I fixed it. It was almost 8. The world outside had gone the color of pewter, quiet streets, wet glass, streetlights blurring in the downpour. Inside, everything felt smaller. Closer. She sat at her desk, a mug of tea cooling beside her elbow, watching as I worked. You don't have to keep me company, I said, adjusting the hinge. I've got it. I know, she said, but I don't like the quiet when it rains. I glanced at her. Doesn't it help you think? Too much, she murmured, and smiled barely. There was something about that smile that made me forget what I was supposed to be fixing. It wasn't flirtation. It was loneliness, briefly disguised as warmth. When the hinge finally held, I turned to find her standing behind me. I hadn't heard her move. She offered me a towel for my hands, her fingers brushing mine, soft, dry, deliberate this time. Thank you, she said, her voice almost lost under the ring. I nodded, but didn't let go right away. Neither did she. The silence stretched, held, then broke when her phone buzzed on the desk. She flinched, stepping back like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. A man's name flashed on the screen. She didn't answer, just watched it ring, jaw tight. I didn't ask, but she must have seen the question in my face. It's complicated, she said quietly. He still calls when he remembers I exist. I waited. She didn't elaborate. Instead, she pressed her palms against the desk, head bowed, the posture of someone trying very hard not to unravel. I used to think love meant forgiving everything, she said. Now I think it just means forgetting slowly. I didn't know what to say to that. The clock ticked once, twice. The rain softened to a whisper. Can I tell you something? I asked. She looked up, eyes cautious but curious. If you want. I didn't come here tonight just to fix a door. Her breath hitched. She looked away, eyes finding the window, the street, anything but me. You shouldn't say that, she whispered. Why not? Because, she stopped, searching for words that didn't come. Because I can't promise I'd tell you to stop. The air between us shifted, thick, uncertain. My pulse felt too loud. I took a step closer without meaning to. She didn't move. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw every reason I should walk away, and every reason I wouldn't. The thunder rolled again, low and close. She exhaled, shaking her head slightly, a smile that wasn't quite one. You're too young to mistake this for something safe. I almost said her name then, but the words caught somewhere between my throat and heart. Instead, I just reached for the mug on her desk, setting it upright before it tipped. My hand brushed hers again, barely. Neither of us pulled away this time. Then the power flickered once more, the lights dimming, and the moment disappeared into shadow. The storm had passed, but the air still carried its echo, heavy, metallic, waiting. The shop was closed for the night, yet neither of us had left. She'd offered to make coffee, maybe as an excuse to stay, maybe out of habit. We sat across from each other at the small table near the back. 2 mugs, 2 shadows, one silence that felt like it had been building for weeks. She stared at her coffee, stirring it even after the sugar dissolved. "You don't have to keep coming by," she said softly. "I know. Then why do you?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing honest sounded right. The truth was simple but dangerous, because I wanted to. Because being near her made everything else feel real. So I said, "You seem like you need someone to talk to." That earned me a quiet laugh, one without humor. "That's a terrible reason." "Maybe," I said, "but it's true." She leaned back, studying me like she was trying to see the line I hadn't drawn yet. "You think this means something?" Her tone wasn't cruel, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of pretending to be fine. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but it's not nothing." That made her look away. Her hands tightened around the mug, the skin of her knuckles pale against the porcelain. "You're making it harder," she whispered. I almost asked, harder than what? But the way she blinked back whatever was behind her eyes stopped me. "Do you ever feel like you're watching your own life from a distance?" she asked suddenly. "Like you're standing at the window, and everything keeps happening without you?" "Yeah," I said. "I feel that all the time." Her lips parted, as if she didn't expect me to understand. Then she smiled faintly, sad, real. "You shouldn't yet. You're still young enough to believe time will fix things. And you don't." "I used to." The words landed between us like confession. The air felt heavier now, charged but fragile. I could hear the hum of the old fridge, the faint ticking of the wall clock, her breathing, steady but too shallow. She looked up suddenly, eyes meeting mine with something like fear. "What are we doing?" It wasn't rhetorical. It wasn't even a question that wanted an answer. It was the sound of someone realizing they'd crossed a line they swore they never would. I swallowed, throat dry. "I don't know," I said, "but I can't seem to stop." That was the wrong thing to say, or maybe the most honest. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. "You should." "I've tried." A pause. Long, raw, unsteady. Her eyes opened again, wet but steady. "You don't understand what it costs to want something you can't have." I almost reached for her hand then, but she drew it back first, folding her arms as if to hold herself together. The silence that followed said everything words couldn't. When I finally stood to leave, she didn't stop me, just whispered, not quite to me, "You make the quiet louder." And I didn't know if she meant it as a warning or as a wound. She called me early that morning, her voice quieter than usual. "Can you stop by? There's something I need help with." When I got there, the shop lights were off. Only the back office lamp was on, casting a pale, uneven glow across the floor. She stood by the filing cabinet, holding an old cardboard box like it was heavier than it looked. "I'm cleaning out the archives," she said. "My brother wants to move the office online." But she wasn't really cleaning. Not yet. She was just standing there, staring at whatever was inside the box. "Want me to take it out back?" I asked. "No." Her voice broke on the word, just slightly. "I just need a minute." I stayed where I was, watching the way her fingers trembled as she pulled out a stack of photographs. They were old, edges curled, colors faded. She flipped through them one by one, eyes soft but far away. After a moment, she held one out to me. "That's him," she said. A man, late 20s maybe, standing beside her, grinning, grease on his hands, sunlight catching on both their faces. She was younger, freer somehow. "My husband," she added. I nodded slowly. "He worked here. He built this place." Her mouth curved into a smile that didn't last. "He died 8 years ago. Accident on the road." The words landed gently, but they carried the weight of something still living in her. "I'm sorry," I said, because what else could I say? She nodded. "So am I." There was a long pause, filled only by the hum of the light above us. I wanted to put the photo down, to give her back the space I'd just entered, but she stepped closer, looking at it over my shoulder. "You remind me of him," she said, almost to herself. "Not how you look. It's something in the way you listen." That sentence lingered, quiet but electric. I felt her breath near my neck as she reached to take the picture, her hand brushing mine. It wasn't the touch that shook me. It was the silence after, thick with something neither of us had meant to invite. She turned away first, sliding the photo back into the box. "I shouldn't have told you that," she murmured. "I'm glad you did." Her head lifted slightly, eyes meeting mine, unreadable. "You think that makes this easier?" "No," I said, "but it makes it real." She closed the box, pressing her palm to the lid like she was sealing a wound. "Real doesn't always mean right." I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped closer, just enough that she could feel I hadn't left. She stayed still, breathing shallow, eyes on the box. Then she exhaled a fragile laugh. "He used to say love was just timing," she whispered. "Maybe that's why it feels cruel when it comes back late." I wanted to ask what she meant, but she was already walking away, the photograph still in her hand. At the door, she paused, her voice low, steady again. "Please don't come tomorrow." Then, almost too soft to catch, "I need to forget your face before it becomes another memory I can't live with." Days passed without her calling. The shop lights stayed dark each time I walked by, and I told myself I was just passing through, not checking, not waiting. But the lie felt thin, like tissue in the rain. Then, one evening, I saw her inside. Alone again, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, sorting papers that didn't need sorting. The door was unlocked this time. She looked up when I stepped in. No surprise, just a tired sort of acceptance. "I told you not to come," she said. "I know." She hesitated, then sighed. That small, quiet sound of someone too weary to pretend anger. "You're not very good at listening." "I am," I said. "Just not when someone says what they don't mean." Her lips pressed together, but she didn't argue. Instead, she sat down at the desk and motioned to the chair across from her. "Fine. Sit, then. Just for a minute." The air felt different now. Not tense, just honest. We'd run out of places to hide. "I've been thinking," she said, staring at her hands. "About what I said last time. That you needed to forget my face?" She winced, a brief flash of shame. "Yes, that." Her voice softened. "I meant it. But it didn't work." Silence. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the space between us again. I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees. "You don't have to be sorry." "I'm not," she said. "That's the problem." When she looked at me, there wasn't longing in her eyes, not even guilt. Just recognition. Like two people realizing they've been circling the same truth from opposite sides. "This isn't love," she said finally. "Not the kind people write about, anyway. It's just real." I finished for her. She smiled faintly. "Messy. Complicated. Wrong, maybe. Alive," I said. That made her laugh, small, breathless. She covered her face with one hand, shaking her head. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," I admitted. "But it's here." She let the silence settle again, softer this time. Then she reached out, not to hold my hand, but to move a scrap of paper closer to her. Still, her fingers brushed mine. Just once. Just enough. It was nothing and everything at once, a quiet surrender disguised as a small mistake. "I don't know where this goes," she said. "Me neither." "Then maybe we just let it be what it is." I nodded. No promises. No plans. Just presence. The rain started again, faint against the roof. She leaned back, eyes half closed, the lines of her face relaxing for the first time since I'd met her. I reached across the table, turned her coffee mug so the handle faced her side. A small, ordinary gesture, but she noticed. Her hand found mine again, this time without hesitation. Warm. Still. Real. No words followed. None were needed. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one, and for a moment, we just sat there, two people finally too tired to fight what had already happened. It wasn't an ending, but it felt like peace. It's been months since that night in the shop. Sometimes, when it rains, I still hear the sound of it on the roof, the same slow rhythm that used to fill the silence between us. She doesn't work there anymore. She finally sold the place, just like her brother always wanted. The building looks smaller now when I pass by, empty windows and faded paint. But sometimes I swear I can still see her silhouette in the glass, one hand on the counter, like she's still deciding whether to lock the door or leave it open. We didn't end in the way people expect. No big confession, no promises of forever. Just a quiet understanding that what we shared didn't need to become anything else. It had already done what it was meant to do. I used to think love was about finding someone who made you feel whole. She taught me it's about finding someone who makes you see yourself clearly, even if only for a moment. She was never mine to keep, and I think she knew that long before I did. But for a while, she let me exist in her world. The worn-out desk, the smell of coffee and oil, the small sighs that came after long silences. I became part of her routine, and she became the pause in mine. I remember the last time we saw each other. It wasn't planned. She was standing outside the cafe near the old bridge, hair pulled back, phone in hand. When she saw me, she smiled. Not the sad kind, not the guarded one. Just simple, free. We talked like old friends who'd survived something together, and maybe we had. There was no heaviness left between us, no what if. Just gratitude. Before she left, she said something I still carry with me. You didn't fix me, she told me. But you reminded me I wasn't broken. I didn't know what to say then. I just smiled. But later, walking home under that same gray sky, I realized how much she'd fixed in me. Not by loving me, but by teaching me what it meant to care without needing to own. Now, when I think about her, it isn't with longing or regret. It's quieter than that, like a song that once played in another room, soft but unforgettable. And maybe that's what love really is. Not the thing that stays, but the thing that changes you before it leaves. If she ever hears this story, I hope she knows I kept my promise. I still watch over her, in the small ways that don't disturb a life finally at peace. And every time it rains, I still remember the sound of her voice saying my name like it was something worth keeping. Sparkles, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?